without a head. The spirit of a Hessian mercenary from the Revolutionary War, a soldier for hire, so full of bloodlust that his fearsome cries could be heard above all other sounds of battle. They say that he filed his teeth to sharp points to make his aspect more ferocious. They say his head was shot clean off by a cannonball somewhere over there in the Western Wall. That he gallops forth nightly to the battlefield to find his head. Then he races along the hollow as if on the wings of the wind to race to his grave before daybreak. No one in Sleepy Hollow dares walk along this night without a good reason to do so. Otherwise, it is a peaceful little farm community. One day, an unsuspecting stranger, young Ichabod Crane, sauntered into the village to take up his residence as a new schoolmaster. To see him walking, we might think him a scarecrow. He was so tall and thin and loosely hung together, his arms dangled out of his sleeves. His feet were enormous. His ears stuck straight out from the side of his head. His nose, well, let's just say it was not small. He had large, soulful green eyes, rather like a frog, and a good singing voice which he employed to help the journey go fast. He wanted to get to the farm where he would be boarding in time for supper. Ichabod had no shortage of an appetite. Ichabod would have been content there in Sleepy Hollow had he not encountered a being that perplexes mortal man more than all the ghosts, goblins, drummers, and politicians put together. He met a woman, Katrina, the only child of the wealthy farmer Van Tassel. She was as ripe and rosy-cheeked as any one of her father's peaches. From the moment Ichabod set eyes on her, all he could think of was how to win the affections of the fair Katrina. On the fateful day that this story takes place, Ichabod dismissed school early. He wanted to look his best for the big party that night at the Van Tassels. Tonight was the night he would propose to Katrina. He donned his one clean boiled white shirt and put on a new necktie and admired himself in the looking glass. After all, hadn't his mother always told him he was a handsome fellow? The horse he borrowed had seen better days. Gunpowder was an old swayback gelding, blind in one eye and reluctant to leave the pasture. But again, Ichabod got the saddle on and mounted. Up on the horse, he found the stirrups were too short, so his knees jutted up high and out to the side, rather like a grasshopper. And the motions of his arms were like the flapping of a crow's wings. At the Van Tassel home, Ichabod made a beeline for the buffet table and loaded his plate with sweet cakes, shortcakes, ginger cakes, and honey cakes. In fact, a whole family of cakes. Then he went after the apple pie, peach pie, pumpkin pie, shoe-fly pie, but he didn't take any humble pie. He piled tender slices of ham and smoked beef on his plate, and he went to a corner to devour it all, thinking, oh, someday all of this would be his when he married the fair Katrina. At that moment, Katrina came down the stairs just as the music began and took in Ichabod by the arm. The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance. Now, all the while, Brom Bones, Katrina's other suitor, sat by himself, brooding and staring, sullen with jealousy. He was a huge, large, muscular fellow, known for his skill at riding horses no one else could tame. For some time now, Brom Bones had been paying court to Katrina, and it was whispered that she did not entirely discourage his hopes. After the dancing, Ichabod joined the farmers in the corner as they started sipping from a jug and gathered to tell stories. Tales were told of funeral trains and the ghostly cries of grief and the wails of the lady in white who floated near the great hanging tree. Most of the story centered on the Headless Horseman, who had been reportedly seen and heard several times lately patrolling the countryside in search of his head. Finally, Brom Bones began to tell the tale of the time he himself had encountered the Headless Rider. A sudden hush fell. Returning late one night from a neighboring village, he, Brom Bones, was overtaken by the midnight trooper, and he challenged him to a race. The spectre's horse blew fire and smoke from his nostrils. Sparks flew from his hooves. They flew down the road. They raced along the hollow. Brom Bones said he would have won, but the Headless Rider suddenly disappeared just as they reached the bridge which crosses the stream bed in the hollow. This very bridge. Ichabod listened, hardly able to breathe, until the story was over. The night grew late, and the merrymakers loaded up their wagons and their goods and made their way home, all except Ichabod, who stayed a while to court the fair Katrina. No one knows what happened between them. But Ichabod left with a broken heart, riding Gunpowder sadly, along the same road he had ridden so happily that afternoon. The stories he heard came to his mind: ghosts, haunted houses, haunted fields, haunted trees, and the Headless Horseman of the hollow. Fearful shapes beset his path. Eerie sounds were everywhere. The sudden rustling in the thicket and the trees. Birds frightened from their roosts. The night grew darker and more silent. Ichabod had never felt so alone. He was coming to the edge of the western wood. His fears took control of him. Look, over there, beside the hanging tree. A patch of white. A ghost? It might have been, but it was only a bare spot where lightning had struck the bark of the tree. Listen. A low groaning coming from the tree itself. But it was only two limbs rubbing together in the wind. He started to whistle to raise his spirit, when he heard another whistle answer him. Startled, he sat up in the saddle. Quickly, he gave Gunpowder a series of short kicks. But the tired old horse would go no faster. Suddenly, Gunpowder came to a halt and almost pitched Ichabod onto his head. There! In the shadow of the trees, something sat, unmoving, huge, misshapen, like some gigantic monster waiting to spring. What was to be done? What was to be done? It was too late to turn and flee. He stammered, "Who are you?" No reply. Again he asked, "Who are you?" Still no answer. He thought of Brom Bones' race with the Hessian and urged his steed to go faster. The stranger quickened his horse to an equal pace. Ichabod pulled up, slowed to a walk, thinking to lag behind. The other rider did the same. His heart sank. He tried to see, but his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. There was something appalling in the silence of the mysterious and unwanted companion. As they rode up the hill, the figure became clearly outlined against the sky. Gigantic, horrible, silent, muffled, in a cloak, and headless. To his horror, Ichabod saw the rider carried his head before him on the saddle. In desperation, he rained a shower of kicks upon Gunpowder, hoping by a sudden movement to give his unwanted companion the slip. Instead, the spectre started full jump with him. Away they dashed, stones flying, snorting flames, and sparks flying, flashing at every bound. As yet, the panic of the steed had given his unskillful rider an advantage in the chase. Just as he got halfway through the hollow, the girth of his saddle gave way and he felt it slipping out from under him. He barely saved himself by grabbing old Gunpowder around the neck. When the saddle fell to the ground and was trampled on by his pursuer, Ichabod slipped on one side, then the other, trying to maintain his seat. The goblin was hard on his haunches. An opening in the trees now revealed the church bridge, the place where Brom Bones' ghostly competition had disappeared. If only I could reach the bridge, I will be safe. Just then he heard the black steed, panting and blowing steam close behind him. He felt its hot breath, another swift kick, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge, thundering over the resounding planks. He gained the other side and turned just to see if his pursuer would vanish in a rush of briar and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin riding in his stirrups in the very act of hurling his head at him. Poor Ichabod tried to dodge the horrible missile. Too late! It was the last thing he saw. The next morning, gunpowder was found grazing near his home. The children came to school, but the schoolmaster was absent. A search party was sent out, and they found a saddle trampled in the dirt. There were tracks of horses' hooves and deep dents in the road leading up to the bridge. But all they ever found of Ichabod was his head, floating on the water. And curiously, at one end of the bridge, they found the remains of a shattered pumpkin. Well, not too long after that, the lovely Katrina married Ron Bones, and the years passed, and the matter was almost forgotten. Well, except for the wagging tongues of the old men as they sipped on a jug and whispered about tales about how the goblins had made off with the schoolmaster one night. Now, every time he heard this said, Ron Bones would smile a curious smile and let out a strange gurgling laugh. As to what really happened to the schoolmaster, you will have to decide for yourself. I bid you good night and sweet, sweet dreams.